Okay, all right, so this is the heat exchanger unit. The way it works is we have cold water coming from the faucet over here. It's going from the faucet to a filter, to a valve which controls the flow rate, to a flow meter. Then out here, up through here, around the outer of the concentric tubes, back in here, and back down into the sink. Then we've got a hot water reservoir here, and if this hot water level starts to drop, it needs to be filled up so that the top of the level, well, so that this probe here is sticking down into the water. Okay, if it goes below that probe, it won't work. So make sure it stays filled up near the top. We've got a pump here, we've got a motor and pump here, and the pump pumps water, the hot water, around here. This is a flow, another flow meter, and if we have it in parallel flow, then the water is coming through here, around this way, through the inside tube, back through here, and back into the reservoir. So it's a closed loop system for the hot water. The cold water comes out of the faucet, goes back down into the sink. The hot water, to keep it warm so we don't have to keep heating it from room temperature, it returns back into the reservoir. We can also change the direction to have counterflow so that the water, instead of coming out this way, is actually coming out from this side, going through in the opposite direction of the cold water and back in. So that's how this unit works mechanically. As far as the controls go, this is down here, the on-off switch, so we want to make sure it's on. And then when we get to the laptop here, you want to log in as heat exchanger unit, as that user, and the password is password, all lowercase, all one word, P-A-S-S-W-O-R-D. All right, now this here is the program to run the heat exchanger. This folder is where the data will be saved. So we'll double click on this, and we are asked, do we want it to go in counter current operation? In other words, do we want the hot and cold water in our tubular heat exchanger to be going in opposite directions, or do we want them to be going in the same direction? So we can pick one or the other. So I'll pick counter current. We load this, and now wait for the little title block to go away. And now we are on the schematic screen, and we can see a little schematic of the heat exchanger. And there are 6 thermocouples on this heat exchanger. So there are 3 for the hot water. Here's thermocouple T1, T2, and T3. And then there are 3 for the cold water. This is T4, T5, and T6. And they correspond, if you want to look down here at the actual unit, to these 6 thermocouples. Okay? We also have a heater control here to control the temperature of the hot water.
Sorry, show me the heater control again. I missed.
Oh, it's right here.
All right.
Okay? And we have the flow rate controllers here. So the first thing we need to do is actually connect the program to the unit. So we're going to go where it says power on. I'm going to click this, and you should hear a mechanical click in the unit itself. Okay? So I don't know if that got caught on the audio of the camera, but it did happen. All right, now we want to turn on the cold water. So we'll just turn this all the way up. And there's a little bit of leakage. So if you look here at the cold water flow rate right there, you can see that there's a little bit coming through, 0.2 liters per minute or so. That's okay. The first thing we're going to want to do now when we run it is we're going to want to try to clear out any bubbles in the system. So I'm going to take the cold water, and I'm going to click on the little up triangle, and I'm going to increase this. And now you should be able to hear the water flowing. I'm going to increase this to 100. In other words, I'm going to open that valve all the way, And I'm going to let it run and make sure I don't see any bubbles in the system. And actually, we've been running this a few times now, so it looks like all the bubbles are clear. You might see a few little leaks here and there. Okay, we'll try to fix those before you actually are doing it, but it's okay. It really doesn't matter if it's leaking just a little bit like that. Okay, once we're confident that we've got most of the bubbles cleared out, we'll lower this back down to 0. Now the cold water, we cannot really set the flow rate. All we can do is set how open the valve is, and as far as the flow rate and the pressure and the temperature, we are at the mercy of the plumbing in the building. So if we want to set this to a certain value, which we will want to do, we're going to have to play around with it until we get it to about where it is. The hot water flow rate we can control, and it has a PID controller, which you'll learn about in DADS if you're taking that course, to try to maintain what we ask it to run at. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set this to manual, and I'm going to increase the flow. I'm going to open this up to 50%. Okay, and you can hear the pump going, and we're just going to look and see that there are no bubbles coming through the system now. Okay, so you can actually see there are some coming through here, and at this flow rate, that is pretty typical. But at lower flow rates, it seems as though we don't have as many bubbles. Okay, I'm going to drop this back down to 0 now. And click OK. All right, so now we're ready to go. So I'm going to set the heater control by clicking here where it says heater. I'm going to set this to automatic, and these are my control variables. This should be set to 2, 100, 0, and 10. That's all fine. And I'm going to set this to, for your project, you're going to set it to 55. For the lab, you're going to look at 3 different temperatures. So I'm going to set apply and OK. And now you might be able to see in the video, I can see it with my own eyes, you might be able to see some wavy lines. Okay, so that's the heat changing the density of the water, and so it's working. All right, and if you look here, in this case, since we have it set for counterflow, all right, the temperature, the hottest temperature is going to be right here at T1. Okay, so we're going to want to look at that and see if is that going to be around 55. Right now, it's not because we don't have any water flowing through it yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to set the flow rate for the cold water. I'm going to try to get that around 2
liters per minute.
Liters per minute, yes. So again, you may have to play around with it a little bit. So that looks like I might have overshot it, or maybe not. Okay, so that's around 2, and that might be as good as we can get right now. And then I'm going to set the flow rate, and here to set the flow rate automatically, I'm going to click on where it says automatic. All right, and now let's say I want this to be also at 2 liters per minute. I want this to be 100, 3, and 0. These are my PID controllers. I'm going to click apply and OK, and now you can see the flow rate is around 2. Now the system will do its best to try to maintain that at 2. The system will do its best to try to maintain the temperature at 55. And so right now, you can see that it's overshot it because we didn't have any water flowing through the system while it was heating. It was just heating and heating and heating, and the temperature here wasn't changing that much. But now that we are actually pulling the hot water from the reservoir and going through here, we can see that we're actually overshooting it, and so it's cooling down now a little bit. And we would just let this run for 5-10 minutes until we feel like things are at steady state, and then we're going to want to use those measurements after that point for our analysis. Another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to save all of this data. So to save the data, first I'm going to click on the little wrench here where it says configure the data sampling. I'm going to want to make sure this is set for automatic 1 second intervals and doing it continuously. Click OK. And then I'm just going to click the little go icon right here. So now it should be capturing the data every second. Let's make sure that it's doing that. So if we look at these icons here, this one gives us our schematic window. This one gives us a plot if we wanted to look at a particular value or a set of values, but you really don't need to worry about this. But this one here is the table. And here you can see that indeed every second we get another reading. And here we have our temperatures. We also have four additional slots for thermocouples, but we don't have anything plugged in there, so that's why these are giving us essentially ridiculous numbers. 133, they're all 133. And then we also have the heat pump setting, the heater pump setting, the flow rate, cold water valve setting, and flow rate, and the direction. There are also some other values here that you may want to do your own calculations to find. All right, so if we want to go back to the schematic, we'll click here. And now we would just let this run for a while until we've satisfied we've got good data. And when we're done, what we can do is click on the stop sign. That'll stop collecting the data. So if you go back to our table now, it's not updating anymore. And then we will save it. So go to File, Save As. And then you want to make sure you're in this folder, Heat Exchanger Data. You want to save it as an Excel 5 file right here. If you save it as in its native default VTS file, you're going to have trouble opening it. But if you save it as an Excel file, you'll be able to open it easily in Excel. And then you want to give it a unique name. Okay, so Professor Marra. Okay, data. Save that, and now that data gets saved here into this folder. You can just open it up in Excel, and here we go. There's all the data, and then you can save this onto a flash drive and take it with you.
I'm going to ask for one more demo.
Yes?
Suppose that I want to bring in my own heat exchanger and get it hooked up. Could you just show me the sequence to do that?
Sure. First, let's turn this off. So I'm going to bring this back to manual and set this to 0. I'm going to close the cold water valve. Okay, you don't have to worry about the heater, but then just turn it off right here by clicking this power on button again. And there it's done, and then you can close it. All right, so that is the lab. Now, suppose you want to replace your own, you want to replace this heat exchanger with your own. So you want to turn the cold water off, okay? And let's see. I don't want to take a bath here. So the cold water connections are here. I'm sorry, no, that's right here. We just changed this. So it's right here. You want to take this bottom ring.
I zoom in on that. It's quite subtle. It's that last ring.
This ring right here, and you want to push it up just a little bit. See that?
Yep.
Okay, and then you can actually do it with one hand, and then just pull it off. And be careful because you don't want to, there will be some water in here. Okay? And then you can do the same thing here with this little ring. Just squeeze, and you don't just want to pull it like this. Okay, you want to hold the bottom and separate it so that you're not applying any force on the unit itself. You're just, all the force is going right into here to separate these two. This one's a little tight. There we go.
Might need some Vaseline or something.
Okay, and then to redo it again, you don't want to push just with one. You want to support it and push it down. Okay.
Ooh, that is tight.
Okay. And then for the hot water, Can you see it? It's right here.
Yep.
This ring.
Gray
Okay.
ring.
This is a little trickier because this gray ring here, you want to squeeze like that. Can you see that?
Yep.
So you want to squeeze here and then pull it out.
Mm.
Okay. And again, be careful because there's water in here.
And this water, it could be hot.
Yes. Not too hot, this one. Okay.
That's why we chose 55 degrees C.
Yeah. Okay. And then it's okay if it drains into here because this just goes down into a bucket. Okay. And then the last one would be right here. So I'm going to squeeze this. I'm going to bring this ring into this lighter part like that. It's really subtle. And pull it off like that.
Nice.
Okay. And now, okay, this can just come right out.
Nice. Oops.
Okay, be careful because it's still connected to these thermocouples here and we don't want to damage them. So we would set this aside. And then you've got your cold connectors here and your hot connectors here. And we'll work with you to try to connect these carefully. But when you're doing it on your own, just be very careful.
A hint to all of our engineers, I strongly suggest that you label your hot and cold ports on your heat exchanger clearly, because it would be a bad thing to have cross connections.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marra.
Thank you very much, Dr. Scott.